I think one of the most important skills there is empathy. Learning to think as your user is a tremendously valuable tool if your goal is to communicate with people. So my name is David Mccann. I'm the co-founder of Make It Lab. We're a behavioral design company.
And I heard that you changed behavior of people, including government and private sector workers as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about how do you change behavior of people?
So when you're applying behavioral design, largely what you're trying to do is to remove what we refer to as barriers that prevent a person from doing what they anyways want to do. So we call this the abyss of stuckness. So the premise would be, we start out with great intention. We want to get up early every day. We want to get a jump on the work that we have to do before everybody else comes in, but we don't. Why don't we do that? It could be the alarm didn't go off. We were up late last night, or we just don't have motivation. We don't really want to do it. So a great deal of what behavioral design is about is identifying these types of barriers. We do this through a process called journey mapping or process mapping.
Right.
And once we've identified these barriers, then we use the knowledge from behavioral science to apply what we call design interventions. And then we test them to see which ones work best.
Wow. Okay, so can you tell me about the project that you find most challenging in terms of changing people's behavior?
Yeah, I think change projects with large organizations are always the toughest.
Right.
And mostly I would say that they're the toughest because everybody wants to succeed, but nobody has enough time to see through the design interventions to test them properly. And so it almost always involves a series of, let's call it less than perfect experiments to see what will work. And so it takes a whole lot more time to apply behavioral design to change management projects than it does to, let's say, product design problems, where we can see returns much more quickly. But change is the hardest place to work for a reason, but when it works, it makes us all feel very happy because work really does get better for people.
So how do you change behavior when there's regulations and limitations and bureaucracy?
We view those as constraints in the environment. Those are always there. So one of the, I suppose, strengths of design thinking methodologies is when you introduce constraints, it actually helps people become more creative. So you just say, these are the boundaries in which you can change things, play in this space. And that focuses people's minds in usually very helpful ways. So it actually is, I view it as a good thing, these types of constraints.
You view it as a good thing. Okay, so here's a problem that a lot of organizations ask me. Like, they normally conduct workshop and trainings and people change behavior just for a short period of time, but it's not sustainable. So I don't know how to make the change sustainable over a long period of time.
So we speak about habit formation when we talk about this kind of behavioral change. There's a let's call it a milestone number that's very important. It takes at least 60 days in order for a habit to cement, for it to actually form.
I heard 21 days.
21 days is actually based on a drug withdrawal study. It's become something of an urban legend, but the real number is about 60 days is how long it actually takes. So when you're looking at, let's call them onboarding strategies, whether it's for change programs or for product design, if you're trying to get someone to, let's say, learn to read every day, it actually takes 2 months. And so when you break down what is happening that initially got the person to be motivated to do that, I want to read every day, and then you need to hook them in the right way in those 60 days, because once you get over that milestone, the habit's there. Our brains are wired now. It becomes very easy for you to say, for example, get up every day and read. But 60 days, not 21.
Okay, so let's say after 60 days you need to travel or do something else. You cannot continue this good habit for like let's say 2 weeks, and then how do you get back to that habit? A lot of employers want their employees to learn new things, to try new skills, right? And then once they break the good habit cycle already, then it's hard for them to come back and learn again, read again.
These things, again, this is why the 60 days matters. Once you've crossed that milestone, it's much easier. After that point, you take 2 weeks off, you come back, it'll be easier to start up again. But for argument's sake, you could, let's say, make it easier by having specific signals in your life. So let's say, for example, you will only read when you sit in that chair.
Rituals.
Correct. Rituals will help a whole lot. They'll help prime you or prompt you to begin your task. So it's quite common in things like cigarette cessation, for example, when you're trying to quit smoking, that you need to identify all of the triggers that cause you to smoke, say standing at the bus stop in the morning, and you need to skip those for quite a long time before you're able to go back and be at that place at that time.
Wow. So the chain of habits, kind of like that?
Habits never go away. All you can do is replace them. If you already have a trigger, take the example of smoking.
Yeah.
I smoked when I was in my teenage years. There are still times and places where I will want to.
Oh.
It's been over 20 years. Once that habit is wired in your brain, it's there. All you can do is replace the behavior from the trigger that causes you to go have the cigarette.
How do you suggest university professors, like I'm a lecturer as well, to motivate students to change their habits, their behaviors? They're expecting success fast and they don't persevere and they don't read and learn by themselves, but they use ChatGPT for their homework and not in a healthy way.
There's one strategy that we actually uncovered during COVID that works really well. So think of your motivational problem as a problem of impatience. Mm-hmm. I want the certificate that comes at the end of the course,
right,
but it's so far away. So can I break down the course and provide something of little micro rewards throughout the progression of that study period? So you can call this chunking. So the premise would be, if there's 50 tasks that need to be done within your learning agenda, then how can you identify, let's say, suitable milestones during that period of time so that they can feel a sense of progress? So that's one thing. The other, specifically on the GPT front, I might just lean into it. How can you use GPT in your course outcome, in your planning? You know they're going to do it.
Right. We cannot avoid it.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
So how can you make use of that in the courses you design? There's some really great examples from edtechs that have begun to lean in. If you look at Khan Academy, they have a really excellent implementation of GPT into their learning courses.
Okay. So we better know how to use ChatGPT. If students can prompt ChatGPT in a very basic way, we know what are the answers would be, right? And then we challenge them with deeper questions so that they can utilize ChatGPT to improve their answers instead of just answering the plain basic questions.
Of course. I mean, listen, here's one thing we talk about all the time in behavioral science. We don't necessarily mean this in a negative way, but humans are lazy.
Right.
If there's a shortcut, we'll probably take it.
Yeah.
So think of it like this. You know they're gonna. So obviously you would want to have some kinds of particular, let's say, tactics up your sleeve to check that they've actually understood the material. Basic things like, did you put something in the writing of your materials that if they just copy pasted, you'd be able to catch it? There's some really great examples of teachers who introduce little micro content like this, like 4-point font, so that if a student is so lazy, then they just go, Control C, copy it in to get the response, it'll show up with an output that you can catch. So things like that are important to prevent cheating, let's say. But I think ultimately what GPT is personalization. It's the world's best tutor.
Right.
So again, I'll go back to that Khan Academy example. What they'll do is, in, let's say, helping a student through a math example, If the student doesn't get it right, it won't give you the answer. What it'll tell you is, hey, I think you went wrong here, and the material that you need to review is on page 4. And then you'll go back to page 4, and then you'll review it, and then you'll come back and do it again. And in that way, what it's like is an excellent tutor. And this is the same way that we use it in the workplace, for that matter. When the user gets stuck, we call this in-task support. What a user will often do, what an employee would often do, is they don't know how to do something, well, they're going to phone a friend, or they're going to ask their boss, which is a waste of time for everybody.
Right.
No one likes to have to. I don't want to have to ask my boss. I don't want to have to ask my peer too often because I'm going to look stupid. And so what GPT tools can become is just-in-time support in natural language.
Yep.
I don't remember how to do this. Oh, you need to go look at that and this. So to me, they're personalization tools that are really helpful for learning.
Okay. So coming back to like AI and A.G.I, I don't know if you see A.G.I in the next 10 years, or do you see any change in workplace or careers for people in the next 10 years? And if there is a change, like a huge one, people will become useless or not? What are the careers that you think are left for a human?
I mean, listen, the A.G.I topic, I don't know. It's pie in the sky to me. Will it happen in our lifetime? Probably.
Lifetime?
Will it happen in the next 10 years? I have my doubts. But to your other two questions, here's what I can say to the impact in the workplace. Here's what a really interesting MIT study spoke to. It does 3 things at 3 key task points. So first, it reduces the amount of time it takes to brainstorm by 1/3. So think leadership team, project team is off in a room. They have a problem to solve. During that day that they're in that room, there's lots of, we should do it like this, we should do it like that kind of debate that happens. It's tedious.
Right.
It takes that day and reduces the amount of back and forth by about 1/3, which is a win. Second, it takes rough drafting time of any project we're going to work on. So you have to complete a report, you need to create some initial design. It takes that task and reduces effort by half. So time to first draft, really, really, really big savings there. Unfortunately, it takes that stage to what we call final product and takes that task effort and doubles it. So polishing and fine-tuning for a customer-ready or a boss-ready report, twice as long.
Why is that?
Because the output of the first draft is dependent on the quality of your prompts and the knowledge base you feed in. And if you're using GPT, which is all of the world's knowledge, then probably the draft output is garbage.
What about a custom GPT?
Again, if you've prompted in the right way and you're feeding it with the right knowledge, then it can produce something pretty good, but it still writes in a very particular style, which takes quite a lot of time to fine-tune. It is possible, but it takes quite a lot of time to fine-tune to speak in a specific way. So for the most part, the average user of an OpenAI product or Gemini or whomever else, it's great for young people who are relatively less experienced in the workplace, because what it means is boss can throw younger person a harder challenge and they can get something of acceptable quality without having to go ask anybody else for help. So it means the young worker can be way more productive and do way more valuable stuff than they used to be able to do, which frees up the older people or the more experienced people to do more complicated stuff like the final editing, the polishing of that final product. So it rebalances the workload to some extent. But here's the headache now. If the young one is not able to do all of the chain prompting and all of the prompt engineering and doesn't understand RAG products and how all that stuff works, then they will be overwhelmed. They will not be able to make that first draft anywhere near the speed of someone who can, which means they'll get out competed in the workplace.
So they still need domain knowledge?
Yes, I think it was McKinsey or KPMG, one of the big consulting firms, did a big research project on this, and what they found was if you did not have domain knowledge, it actually was less efficient for you to use GPT products.
Because you get lost and you don't know how to get back, probably.
Partly, and also partly because when the boss sees the garbage that you produced, boss says, no, you go back and fix that.
Yeah.
At which point you end up having to read all of the domain knowledge that you don't have to incorporate it more properly to key in the right prompts. So listen, you still need expertise in your domain. You can't just give GPT to a 20-year-old and say, you are now a financial planner. It doesn't work that way.
Okay.
They still need to understand that domain. And then what GPT does is make a whole bunch of work way easier and faster. But it still comes with needing to spend a lot of time to make that document polished enough to give to a client.
So you still see AI as a tool that human
yeah.
has to like make decision and make good judgment and like prompt well based on their domain expertise?
100%. It makes so many administrative tasks easier. Say, a significant amount of the code that a front-end engineer would do, it makes that really easy. What it does do is it frees up time for him to come back and look at that code and, let's just say, structure it properly to maybe be more efficient in how he codes or how she codes. It's still a tool though. It is not one that is going to be, let's say, eliminating half the workforce. Not at all. At least not in my view.
Okay, that sounds positive to me. So what are the fields of study that you recommend high school students pursue in their college?
I mean, listen, if I were to go back, I would have spent way more time learning to code.
Learning to code?
Code is such
You know, NVIDIA founder Jensen Huang said that don't learn to code.
To me, I don't love coding, but when you're experimenting with GPT and you don't understand coding at all, how can you write the correct prompts?
If you have critical thinking, but you don't know how to code, then can you prompt well?
Again, back to the problem of garbage. I've written code with GPT and I'm not a developer. I understand Python and R well enough to go through the logic of it, but the output that I get is garbage compared to the output of a developer. I mean, I hear his point, but I don't know. It's like learning another language. You can't understand how people behave and how they think until you know how they speak. And developers speak in code. So to me, I don't know, I still think learning to code is important. But again, I'm not him.
Right. And what about 3 essential skills? Like if it's not about coding, anything that people should develop right now in order to stay relevant for the next 10 years?
Let's say on the soft skills side of the fence, I mean, behavioral design is where we play most of our time, and I think one of the most important skills there is empathy. Learning to think as your user is a tremendously valuable tool if your goal is to communicate with people through a marketing program, to build products for them, or to build service experiences for them. So I think to me, empathy is incredibly useful. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, being collaborative is very helpful, but I also think the hard skills still matter.
Right.
Being
Which
able
is
to
coding.
do coding, statistical skills, mathematical skills, this stuff is hard for AI to do. If you understand how to do forecasting, you can do amazing things with AI. If you're trying to understand where the price of something is going to go, know that your model will work only for a time. And so you'll need to know how to change your model when someone else figures out what you're doing. So if you're trying to be able to predict the value of assets in the future, stocks, gold, houses, these kinds of things, if you're trying to predict, let's call it really complicated systems problems, let's say, for example, like the folks who did the the DNA project, or the folks that have tried to understand how protein folding works.
Yeah,
They use
AlphaFold.
tons of AI in that, right? But they also understand statistics very, very well. And I think if you aspire to do groundbreaking, world-changing stuff, math.
Math.
Statistics and math.
You know, people don't like math that much, right? It is hard.
There's a reason it's hard, but I don't know. To me, it's worth learning those things.
Okay, so is there anything you want our audience to know in terms of, you can talk about your Make It Lab as well, like if they want to learn more about it, or if there's any resource that they can dig in and
Yeah. We have plenty of resources that are freely available on the Make It Tools website, so you can go there and learn about the behavioral design strategies, which will allow you to change everything from changing somebody's habits to persuading somebody to try something new. So there's loads of material on that that's free. There's also a number of case studies that we have that speak to it in plainer language so people can understand. One of our resources is available in English and Thai. So
in Thai as well? Wow.
But I would say on the Make It side, here's our view. We want to embed behavioral design into products and experiences for a reason. It works. When you can empathize clearly enough with your target user and understand how they make the decisions that they make, the mental model that they use to approach a decision, the environment in which they make that decision. If you can understand that and embed behavioral design principles that help with this stuff into the products that you build, listen, digital products and experiences can be so much better than they are today. We've seen it happen with the cases that we've worked on, the products that we've built. You can make things better if you spend a little bit more time for key products and features to understand the user and use psychological interventions to help make things a little bit better, especially in the sticky places. Like if you're talking about getting people to save more money, pay down their debt, exercise more regularly, all of these kinds of things that we all want to do but are largely failing the world over at doing without help. I mean, listen, this is why we want behavioral design to be inside of products and experiences, because we're mostly digital. We largely relied on our parents and friends to help us through these things in the past, and that isn't how people work today. So we need to somehow make our products better so that people can become financially better off, healthier, can be less annoyed by administrative burdens at work, all this kind of stuff. So fantastic resource to include inside of a product design, but check it out. makeit.tools is our website.
Okay, so thank you for listening, and please hit like and subscribe. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was awesome.